Imagine sitting in a crowded room where everyone is talking, yet you cannot hear a single word. You watch mouths move, eyes light up with manufactured excitement, and heads nod in unison to scripts they didn't write. You are physically present, but psychologically, you are miles away. A cold, sharp realization washes over you. You don't belong here anymore. This isn't the familiar sting of teenage awkwardness or the passing blues of a rainy afternoon. It is a deep, structural isolation that follows you even when you return to your quiet room. You check your phone, scrolling through digital echoes, looking for a connection that matches your depth, only to find a vast desert of superficiality. You begin to wonder if something is fundamentally broken within you. You ask yourself why the spaces that once offered comfort now feel like cages, and why the people who used to understand you now feel like total strangers. But what if this haunting emptiness is not a disease, but a cure? What if the ache you call loneliness is actually the first traumatic symptom of your psychological liberation? Most people spend their entire lives running from this silence because society has conditioned us to view isolation as a failure. We are told that to be alone is to be rejected, broken, or left behind by the herd. This is the ultimate evolutionary deception. When you pull back the layers of human psychology and peer into the hidden architecture of the mind, you discover a shocking counter-truth. The universe is not abandoning you to the dark. It is stripping away your dependencies. The pain you are experiencing is the cracking of a shell you have outgrown. You aren't lonely. You are quietly, painfully, and beautifully becoming sovereign. To understand why this transition feels so agonizing, we must look at how your mind was originally captured. From the moment you were old enough to speak, your brain was subjected to a relentless process of social domestication. Psychologists refer to this as the social conformity bias, an ancient survival mechanism designed to keep the individual loyal to the tribe. In the primitive wild, separation from the group meant physical death. Because of this, your nervous system is hardwired to seek validation, to fit in, and to mirror the behaviors of those around you. The modern world has weaponized this evolutionary flaw. It has built an invisible architecture of expectations, schedules, and digital echo chambers designed to keep your consciousness entirely externalized. You were taught to look outside yourself for meaning, to define your worth by the applause of the crowd, and to measure your progress by scripts written by a system that profits from your predictability. This externalized existence functions perfectly until a silent crisis occurs deep within your unconscious mind. Think of it as a psychological glitch. One morning, the distractions stop working. The cheap entertainment, the casual conversations, and the superficial validations that used to keep you comfortably numb suddenly lose their flavor. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as the confrontation with the self, a moment where the unconscious mind rebels against the artificial persona you have constructed to please the world. When this happens, a profound sense of existential boredom takes over. Hobbies that once sparked enthusiasm now feel hollow. Social gatherings feel like rehearsed theater, and you find yourself observing human behavior with a strange, detached clarity. This is the moment the matrix fractures. Your mind is rejecting the conditioning, but because you don't yet know how to live without the script, you mistake this initial emptiness for loneliness. This is where the psychological conflict intensifies. When you begin to pull away from collective illusions, the herd doesn't celebrate your awakening. It senses your detachment and reacts with subtle hostility. Society demands conformity because your obedience validates its choices. When you stop participating in the shared madness, you become a mirror that reflects the unexamined anxieties of those around you. Your silence challenges their noise. Consequently, you may find yourself quietly marginalized, omitted from gatherings, or spoken of with a hint of condescension. This triggers an intense internal panic. Your primal brain screams that you are being cast out into the wilderness to die. The emotional tension becomes almost unbearable as you stand caught between two worlds. You can no longer fit into the shallow reality of the crowd, yet you do not yet feel strong enough to stand entirely alone in your own truth. The hidden truth that no one tells you is that this agonizing space is a sacred psychological crucible. In the study of human behavior, true individuation, the process of becoming a fully integrated, independent human being, cannot occur without the absolute destruction of your social dependencies. You must be starved of external validation so that your mind is forced to generate its own approval. As long as you can run to a friend, a partner, or a digital distraction to rescue you from your inner silence, you will remain a psychological infant, perpetually dependent on the environment to keep you stable. The isolation you are experiencing is not a punishment. It is a clinical quarantine. The universe has intentionally closed the doors to external escapes to force your attention inward, where your real life has been waiting, buried beneath decades of other people's expectations. As you sit in this quarantine, the emotional escalation deepens. The silence becomes a mirror that reflects everything you have spent your life avoiding. Your shadow side, the repressed fears, the unhealed betrayals, the abandoned dreams, and the unexpressed anger, begins to bubble up to the surface. Without the background noise of a chaotic social life, you are forced to look at these fractured pieces of your identity. It feels like a psychological death, and in a very real sense, it is. The person you were trained to be is dying. The agreeable, predictable, approval-seeking entity that you mistook for yourself is suffocating in the vacuum of isolation. This is why the path of the sovereign soul is so narrow and lonely. It requires the courage to sit still while your old identity burns to ash, trusting that whatever survives the fire is your true, authentic self. This is the exact turning point where a radical perspective shift must occur. You must stop viewing your isolation through the lens of scarcity and begin viewing it through the lens of rarity. Highly intelligent and integrated minds do not withdraw from society because they hate humanity. They withdraw because they value clarity over noise and depth over superficiality. Arthur Schopenhauer noted that a person's desire for solitude is directly proportional to the worth of their own mind. When your internal world becomes rich, complex, and deeply attuned to reality, the casual, hyperstimulated interactions of the modern world stop offering nourishment. They become a tax on your energy. You realize that what most people call connection is actually just mutual distraction. Two lonely souls using each other to avoid looking into the abyss of their own lives. Once you see through this illusion, you can never go back to pretending. The confrontation with your inner world demands an unsettling look at how your language and interactions have been compromised. For years, you used small talk and self-deprecating humor as defensive armor to blend into the scenery. You minimized your insights so as not to provoke the insecurity of the group. But as the isolation deepens, this verbal camouflage begins to fail you. You can no longer participate in the daily rituals of complaining, gossiping, or debating over trivialities. You begin to feel an immense psychological exhaustion whenever you try to force yourself back into those old conversational rhythms. It feels as though every superficial word you utter is a betrayal of your developing consciousness. The emotional stakes rise as you realize that choosing silence over shallow engagement means letting go of the remaining threads holding you to your old social circle. This withdrawal forces you to confront the cognitive dissonance that has run your entire life. You begin to see that your previous busy schedules and frantic social calendars were simply mechanisms of avoidance. The fear of missing out was actually a fear of meeting yourself. In this stage of isolation, the silence can feel deafening because it is filled with the echoes of unmade decisions and delayed personal responsibility. The internal noise threatens to overwhelm you, making you want to run back to any crowd that will have you, just to quiet the internal interrogation. It is a moment of pure emotional suspension where you must choose between the comfortable slavery of the group mind or the terrifying, unpredictable freedom of your own awakening intelligence. When you fully embrace this shift, the nature of your loneliness undergoes a miraculous transformation. The empty, hollow ache of isolation evolves into the solid, heavy, immovable presence of sovereignty. To be sovereign means that you are no longer a passenger in the collective consciousness. You are the author, the ruler, and the guardian of your own reality. You no longer speak just to fill the silence. You speak with intent. You no longer seek out relationships out of a desperate fear of being alone. You connect out of an abundance of self-possession. You become immune to the mass psychoses and emotional hysteria that sweep through modern society, because your validation is generated from within. You look at the chaotic world not with fear or bitterness, but with the calm, detached compassion of a mountain climber looking down at a storm in the valley below. This shift changes how you perceive time itself. The modern world conditions you to live in a state of perpetual anticipation, always working for a future milestone or an external reward that promises ultimate relief. In solitude, that linear illusion shatters. You realize that freedom is not an asset to be accumulated or a destination to be reached after decades of compliance. It is a current state of awareness. The silence stops being a vacuum waiting to be filled by future plans and becomes an active, vibrant space of immediate presence. By stepping out of the collective race, you stop measuring your life by societal metrics and start evaluating it by the depth of your immediate experience, transforming your isolation from a state of waiting into a state of arrival. This transformation completely alters how you engage with the world. You begin to understand that the people who walked out of your life, the opportunities that faded, and the relationships that fractured were not tragedies, but necessary psychological purges. The universe was simply clearing the field of play, removing the structures that were keeping you small. You no longer force connections that have run their course, nor do you apologize for your need for quiet spaces. You recognize that your solitude is your ultimate power. It is the fortress where your creativity is forged, the temple where your intuition is sharpened, and the anchor that keeps you steady when the rest of civilization is drifting in collective confusion. You have finally stopped trying to survive inside a system designed to make you predictable, and you have started creating a life aligned with your own soul. As you step into this newfound authority, your interactions with others undergo a complete structural rewrite. You stop trying to win arguments or convince people of your perspective because you realize that debating with the unexamined mind is a waste of your cognitive energy. True power does not need to dominate a conversation. It rests comfortably in its own clarity, entirely undisturbed by the opinions of the collective. When you do choose to speak, your voice carries a different weight because it originates from a place of unshakable internal alignment. You show up in social spaces not as a beggar looking for attention or approval, but as a self-contained entity, capable of offering genuine presence without needing anything in return. So if you are watching this, sitting in the quiet luxury or the heavy ache of your own isolation, let this message serve as your profound awakening. You are not broken. You are not weird, antisocial, or left behind. You are simply waking up from a hypnotic trance that still holds the rest of the world asleep. The loneliness you feel is the heavy weight of your crown being placed upon your head. It is a narrow, steep, and solitary climb up the mountain of self-mastery, but it is the only path that leads to true freedom. Walk it with your head held high. Honor the silence that protects your mind, and remember that the world has never been changed by those who marched perfectly to the beat of the herd. It is shaped by the quiet, sovereign souls who dared to face the stillness, found themselves within it, and walked out into the light, entirely free. Your isolation is the ultimate act of rebellion against a civilization that profits from your constant distraction. Every moment you spend sitting peacefully with your own thoughts, resisting the urge to escape into cheap validation, you reclaim a piece of your stolen autonomy. The path of individuation is demanding, and it will require you to say goodbye to the versions of yourself that were built for other people's comfort. But on the other side of that psychological fire lies an unshakable life, anchored not in the shifting sands of social approval, but in the permanent bedrock of your own soul. Trust the process of your own unfolding, protect the quiet spaces of your life, and step boldly into the magnificent, sovereign being you were always meant to become.